Well, welcome to Forecast. Thank you so much for being here. This day is going to be absolutely jam-packed with amazing content and sessions. But before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to tell you a story. The story of First Street and how we took a simple idea and made it a critical component of the climate risk financial modeling community that you are all a part of. We started First Street because we wanted to open the world's eyes to the risks associated with climate change. Climate change, that amorphous thing that no one can touch and feel, yet it has the power to actually bring financial stability into risk and threatens humanity. Yet, climate change is absent from our day-to-day thoughts and concerns. So we thought, what if we took the physical components of climate, floods, wildfire, heat, drought, and what if we attached that to what is, for the vast majority of Americans, their most valuable asset, their home? If we did that, we could make climate change a today issue, a dollars and cents issue, an insurance issue, a resale issue. We could make it a dinner table conversation. But ultimately, we could connect climate change to financial risk. So that's exactly what we did. To do this, we went out and we assembled a group of the world's best scientists, the literal authors from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, who led chapters on cyclonic activity and sea level rise. People that use fun words like pluvial flooding and fluvial flooding day in and day out. And we said to them, how should we possibly do this? To which they replied, if you're going to do this, you need to create physics-based models. You need to use physics models because they will allow you to have the precision that you need to understand risk from structure to structure, building to building. And you need to run it at a resolution that allows you to generate the insights that you're looking to provide. But most importantly, you need to do this through the peer-reviewed process, and you need to be transparent in what you do. Because you are building this off of the decades of research that came before you. You are building on the shoulders of greats, and you need to give back to the community that you're looking to benefit from. So with that, we, for the next 8 years, worked diligently to create 10 distinct models, 31 peer-reviewed papers, and 12 national risk assessments. And now you can take a portfolio of properties, upload it into the First Street Enterprise Suite, and instantly know your risk today and how it'll change into the future. You can measure under different SSPs, the shared socioeconomic pathways. You can look at different likelihoods, and you can look at different time frames. And you can look at an individual property and understand the risk that it may face, what the damage could be, and the associated downtime. You can look at catastrophe models that we've created, whether it's flood or wildfire or extreme winds. You can look at them collectively in a first-of-its-kind correlated risk model, something that takes the insurance industry months to run and deliver for one catastrophe model, we can now do in minutes. And on top of all of that, you can understand the macroeconomic variables, insurance, and population migration. You may have seen last week, we launched our 12th National Risk Assessment, where we identified that, the macroeconomic variables, as the biggest risk to property values. While the acute events of the last 6 months are what generate headlines, Hurricane Debby, Hurricane Helene, the LA wildfires, and they do so for good reason because they cost us hundreds of billions of dollars in damage. Those are the more acute events. The real broad risk to portfolios is in the macroeconomic impacts, insurance premiums, local GDP, labor, population migration. That is what we need to measure and what we can now measure. But all of this is only valuable if you can believe our models, if we can validate our models, if you trust us so that you can invest with the insights we provide. So let's talk about the events of the last 6 months that I just mentioned with Hurricane Debby, Helene, and the LA wildfires. Hurricane Debby was a devastating event that made its way through Florida and multiple states. It actually had a dam let the water out before it was destroyed itself, impacting and causing damage to over 160,000 homes. Of those homes, 124,000 were outside the FEMA Special Flood Hazard Area. All of those properties were part of the First Street physics-based flood model. All of them were identified with risk. Weeks later, Hurricane Helene actually makes landfall in the exact same spot, damaging properties that were just damaged by Debby and making its way up to Asheville, North Carolina, where it was a never-before-seen, not part of the recorded history, precipitation event that devastated the community. The First Street physics-based precipitation model not only identified that as a probable outcome, but as a likely outcome. And most recently, we've seen the LA wildfires. Now, I'm going to read you a quote from the LA Times from an article that was published last week on this Monday. An analysis by the Times found that the thousands of Altadena properties within the Eaton Fire's perimeter modeled by First Street, the company had identified 94% having either severe or extreme fire risk, carrying at least a 1 in 7 chance of being in a wildfire over a 30-year window. By comparison, just 21% of those properties were in a CAL FIRE very high fire severity zone. But the Eaton fire wasn't the only part of the LA fires. The Palisades fire started on the same day and burned for just as long, destroying an additional 6,830 structures. Of those destroyed structures, First Street identified 92% as either having severe or extreme risk. All of these events are predictable. Now, we know just how important our models are because they're trusted by the federal government, the top financial institutions, the top asset owners and managers, and they're trusted by everyday Americans, day in and day out, looking for their forever home, whether it's through Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com, where they see our data. And because of this, we know that we just can't serve the US anymore. We need to create global models. And that's exactly what we've been doing, working day and night to try and bring those to market so that you can not only just upload a portfolio and understand risk for the United States, but for any property on the Earth's surface. I'm pleased to tell you that we will be able to do that by the end of June this year. But because we have those global models, that's not the only thing that we'll be able to do. We'll be able to take firmographic data, understanding the operations of public and private companies and the locations of those facilities, and run that through our platform, through the First Street Enterprise Suite, so that we can identify a climate risk assessment for any corporation in the world. All a user has to do is type in the name of the company and hit enter. How cool is that? Now, obviously, everyone is not here so that I can have my small Steve Jobs moment at the front of the stage. And so I would like to get to the important stuff. Throughout the day, you're going to hear from the world's best experts, the people that are going to talk to you about property value and labor force and GDP. You'll hear how the science has become precise enough that we can use these physics-based models I'm talking about to understand risk at a property level. But most importantly, you'll hear from the practitioners in the space, the practitioners of the climate risk financial modeling category. The goal of Forecast is for us all to learn collectively as a community. And so what better way than to hear from your peers and how they're managing this than to do that? At First Street, we believe that with the right climate risk financial modeling solution, portfolios can be optimized, opportunities can be identified, bad investments can be avoided, and companies can be more profitable. I hope that by the end of today, this is what you will all leave with. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for participating in this inaugural event.